Here we are again, another episode of Tales from the Troll Hole. Now, I changed the intro to remove the talking because I'm going to tell you what the show is anyway, and also you very likely clicked on this episode, so you know what it is, so I don't need to tell you twice. Anyway, welcome friends. I feel like I've been noticing when I say idioms and phrases, and I have no fucking idea what they mean, but I use them in the correct context. But now I'm beginning to get curious about the etymology. Not to be confused with the entomology, by the way. And here's a fun trick for how to know when to use each one that I remember. So for etymology, the study of words, not to be confused with entomology. And I remember that because entomology is bugs, and ents, like from Lord of the Rings, bugs would be on ents. Ents would be covered in bugs. So for entomology, bugs. Etymology, words. There you go. You're welcome. Or perhaps your brain works correctly and you just know the difference between those words, in which case, congratulations. I am very happy for you. And that is not sarcastic. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to look into the origins and meanings behind different idioms and turns of phrase. Turns of phrases? Turns of phrase. The plural is in turns. This might be a bad idea. This might expose how little I know about anything at all. The source that I'm using mostly is going to be Britannica.com, as in Encyclopedia Britannica. There's also StoryEmpire.com and thehenryford.org. So that's where I'm getting this information from. And it may or may not be correct. You got to use your own thinking power to see what you think about it. The first phrase we're going to look at is to turn a blind eye. Like, I'm going to turn a blind eye to this one time, but next time you better do it right or something. So the supposed origin of this is disputed, but it's commonly accepted that turning a blind eye comes from a comment made by British Admiral Horatio Nelson. In 1801, he led the attack alongside Admiral Sir Hyde Parker in the Battle of Copenhagen. Nelson was blind in one eye. Parker communicated to Nelson at one point via flags that he needed to retreat and disengage. Nelson, however, was convinced that he would prevail if they pushed onward. Nelson then, holding the telescope to his blind eye, pretended not to see the signal, making a sly comment to a fellow officer about reserving the right to use his blind eye every now and then. Well, that's cheeky, isn't it? I will say that I think it's irresponsible of them to not put the outcome of the battle there, because if he proceeded to go through with that and then lost, that would be embarrassing. But if he won, I mean, I would see that movie. Is it already a movie? More research needed. Okay, the next one is feeling under the weather. So, you say it when you're sick, like you're under the weather. And I wondered about this one because weather happens above us mostly, doesn't it? So everybody's under the weather all the time. Perhaps I was being too literal. So for the origin, it's another nautical one. When a sailor was feeling ill, he would go beneath the bow, which is the front part of the boat. This would hopefully protect him from adverse conditions, as he was literally under the bad weather that could further sicken him. Okay. That makes sense. Although I feel like below deck would be better, because that's a more literal interpretation. Because you're still under the weather, you're just being sheltered from it. You know what I mean? I don't like that. That's not satisfying at all. Okay, here's another one. To beat around the bush, to circle the point or avoid the point. Okay, so this phrase is thought to have originated in response to game hunting in Britain. While hunting birds, participants would beat bushes in order to draw out the birds. They're beating around the bush before getting to the main point of the hunt, actually capturing the birds. That's a sad one, and I don't like it. I hate it. I won't beat around the bush about it. I hate that origin. Ooh, here's a fun one. Okay, spill the beans. I love this phrase. Okay, so it's to leak a secret. For the origin of this one, it's a bit tricky as there is no clear-cut answer. The consensus is, however, that this is most likely derived from an ancient Greek voting process which involved beans. People would vote by placing one of two colored beans in a vase, white typically meaning yes, black or brown meaning no. This meant that should someone spill the beans, the secret results of the election would be revealed before intended. Hence, spilling the beans is related to revealing secret information. Once again, this could apply to an episode of The Office. When Michael and Jim are both co-managers and they're trying to figure out how to give the cost of living raises out, they're voting using beans, and then the employees all find their way into the conference room and reveal the voting of who has more beans on their headshot, meaning that they would get a larger raise. So that's funny. I wonder, that had to be intentional, right? The writers of The Office were very smart. All right, the next one is the proof is in the pudding. Let's see. Depending on who you ask, you'll actually find an array of definitions for this odd idiom. Here are some of the most commonly used definitions. So there is evidence to back up a previously made claim, specifically evidence intrinsic to the object in question. For example, of course this project will be successful. The proof is in the pudding. The success of something can only be measured by putting it to its intended use. For example, you'll have to try it out before you buy it since the proof is in the pudding. That's kind of confusing. Okay, so for the origin, the reason for the plethora of definitions is most likely the Americanization of the old British idiom, which reads, "The proof of the pudding is in the eating." Whereas the British version makes at least some sense, the shortened American version is nonsensical. This led to the varied use of the idiom in a multitude of situations with various understandings of the definition. The British version, however, is closest in definition to the third listed above. The word proof was synonymous with test in the 16th century, which is when this idiom is thought to have surfaced. Pudding is also far different from today. It was most likely a minced meat dish. Therefore, the true test of the success of the pudding dish is in how it tastes, not any ornamentation of appearance. More generally, the success of something can be measured only by putting it to its intended purpose. It is unknown where the more American definitions came from, although they are used very commonly. Now, I will absolutely agree. The British one makes way more sense. I've never heard that before. Now, I've said the proof is in the pudding, but I didn't know why I've said it. It just felt like the right thing to say, which is terrific because apparently nobody knows what it means when they're saying it because it means so many different things and is, in essence, a bastardization of this other phrase that makes way more sense. And in my head, when I say the proof is in the pudding, I think it's like a chocolate pudding, but I forget that it was a meat pudding probably, which is very upsetting to consider. The next one is I've got it in the bag. And that means to have assurance of success. For the origin, although there are other recorded uses, the version of this idiom that has become so widely accepted came out thanks to the old New York Giants, now the San Francisco Giants baseball team. It began as a superstition. In 1916, the Giants had a run of 26 consecutive wins. A bag filled with 72 extra baseballs would be put on the playing field at the beginning of each game. These balls were used to replace any that were hit into the seats or any that became too dirty. The Giants, during this crazy winning streak, fell under the impression that if they were in the lead during the 9th inning, carrying the ball bag off the field would ensure their win because, according to the team, they had captured the game in the bag. That is really fun. I had no idea that it referred to a bag full of baseballs. That is wild. I always thought I've got it in the bag, meaning when you have purchased something, and it's yours now. It's in the bag. You're taking it home with you. It's yours. You have it in your bag satchel of purchases belongs to you. So the win is mine. I have it in the bag. But that's really cool. I mean, sports is so full of superstition. And I'm not sure if people are ready to have that conversation. But you know what they say, the proof is in the pudding. Here's one for a pinch of salt. Adito salis grano. Is that Latin? Holy smokes. Was first used by Pliny the Elder around AD 77, referring to King Mithridates the Sixth of Pontus, oh my god, who developed immunity to poisoning by ingesting small regular doses of poison with a grain of salt to make them more tolerable. Ironically enough, when Mithridates was defeated by the Romans, he drank poison to kill himself, only to discover that this was no longer effective. He ended up stabbing himself instead. A problem solver. Very good. While Pliny obviously meant the phrase literally, the English started using a similar expression, cum grano salis, in the Middle Ages. This more modern version implies that just as adding salt enhances flavor, taking a dubious story with a pinch of salt makes it more digestible. That's okay, I see. So take this with a grain of salt, meaning don't take this. This might not be easy to digest on its own. Don't believe this or something. It's still a little bit hazy, but I understand where it came from. That's very interesting. I've never heard that before. And my sincere apologies to anybody who understands the languages and words I tried to say, because I'm sure I muddled it. I have always wondered about this one. Okay, baker's dozen. The Assize of Bread and Ale of 1262 was a piece of medieval legislation that aimed to stop bakers from selling underweight loaves. Scandal. To stay on the right side of the law, bakers started to give an extra piece of bread away with every loaf and a 13th loaf with every dozen. I'm not kidding. I thought the baker's dozen, there was a 13th because it was like the baker had to test it. And then it was just a cute thing. And like everybody was like, well, let's give it to the people. We know what it tastes like. We don't need the baker's dozen. But that's really interesting. It was because the bakers were being sneaky. How strange. And isn't that interesting that even back then there were consumer rights? It had to be in legislation. Back then, it was such a big problem of selling under. Just weigh it in front of but then maybe what if you like fucked around with your scales? Okay. Yep. They had to do legislation. They had to. What was the punishment if you got caught still doing it after the Assize of Bread and Ale of 1262? Were you put in the stocks? Was it, I need to see, this is the problem with opening a can of worms. Sometimes the worms are longer than you expected, and you just keep pulling and pulling and pulling, and then you get to the bottom, and you're like, where's the bottom of this worm? But you don't have time to worm it up. You got stuff to do. Jeez. Dead as a doornail. Okay. Medieval carpenters nailing doornails, which were particularly thick, had a practice of first striking them all the way in, then hammering the head sideways in a way that ensured it couldn't be pulled out or used again. Such a nail was appropriately called a dead nail. The phrase dates back to at least the 14th century when the words dead as a dory nail appear in Middle English poems like the Romance of William of Pallern and William Langlands Piers Plowman. Shakespeare also uses it in Henry IV, Part 2. And if I do not leave you all as dead as a doornail, I pray God I may never eat grass more. I don't understand that. I should know more Shakespeare because I love theater and I've done a lot of theater, but the only Shakespeare I ever was in was Romeo and Juliet. So unfortunately, this Henry IV eating grass makes no sense to my brain. But I'm glad I know what dead as a doornail means now, and it makes sense. And I like that it makes sense. To give someone the cold shoulder. It's been said that the Iliad is the story of a bad guest breaking hospitality rules, and that the chaos that broke out because of that. And all the chaos that broke out because of that. This suggests just how important hospitality was in the past, so it's no surprise that a guest would be received with a grand meal in the Middle Ages. However, What happens when they overstay their welcome? They would be served leftovers, such as a cold shoulder of mutton from the previous night's dinner, lending to this memorable phrase. It's like, you've been here too long. Here's a gross, congealed blob. Get out of my house. This is one of my favorite ones. To fly by the seat of your pants, or to improvise by instinct. Prior to the widespread use of reliable aviation instruments, pilots were at the mercy of the weather. Assessment of cloud cover and potential storms were vital in the early days of flying, when encapsulation of an aircraft by thick cloud or dense fog could have fatal consequences. The thin air and inability to see could become disorienting. When overtaken by rough conditions, a skilled pilot would fly by the seat of their pants. They flew by instinct and feel, and their backside, or the seat of their pants, made the most physical contact with the airplane. I think that's got to be similar to talking out of your ass, right? Like, just seeing what you can do in the moment, trusting your gut instincts, making it up as you go along. That's really cool. I had no idea that it literally says fly by the seat of your pants, but I didn't think it had anything to do with aviation. Not really, but that makes a ton of sense. And surely, if one can fly by the seat of their pants, they can fall by the seat of your pants as well. To fail at improvising. This one is a much more recent idiom that I have not given any thought to until now, but surf the net. A librarian is to be credited with the perfect 90s slang idiom, surf the net. Jean Armour Polly was one of the first librarians to prioritize free internet access in a public library setting. An assistant library in 1981, Polly advocated for the Liverpool Public Library of Liverpool, New York, to make computer and internet access available to the library's patrons. She faced backlash from traditional librarians who saw the internet as a threat to books and other printed matter, but worked to convince others that the internet could be a source for learning. Polly's 1992 Guide for a Library Journal titled Surfing the Internet, an Introduction, used surfing as a metaphor for using the internet. She recalled that she felt it appropriate because it's hard. You need some skill. You never know if there are going to be sharks. The phrase surfing the net quickly caught on and spawned variations like net surfer. She later wrote in a book, Net Moms, Internet, Kids, and Family Yellow Pages, which became a best-selling resource for families looking to provide fun and safe educational internet access for children. In 2019, Polly was inducted into the Internet Hall of Fame. I had no idea there was an Internet Hall of Fame, and now I need to know who all is in it, and that might be a great thing for the next episode. But you know how I am. I will probably forget that, and next week will be something unrelated. Who knows? Who knows? I'm just flying by the seat of my pants here. Now, real quick, we're going to go back to frog facts. I haven't done those in a few episodes, but I have been thinking about the fact that frogs have been around for millions and millions and millions of years, and how amazing that is. And then I thought there have to be fossils of frogs. So I'm going to look at some. So this information is going to come from the Natural History Museum, nhm.ac.uk. Now I'm looking for like giant, because everything was bigger back then. All of the creatures and bugs and everything. So I would have thought that frogs would have been bigger, right? I don't think so, because I'm looking at this one right now and it says it's 7 centimeters long. It's a larval amphibian from 300 million years ago. And you can see the outline of the entire body, the shape of the long tail, the eyeballs, and even a faint impression of gills. 300 million years. Oh, wait, I just saw one. It's got a straight up skeleton. This might be a good one. Hang on. Here we go. Fucking pay dirt. So this is the Europs, Eryrops, megacephalus. It's at the American Museum of Natural History, and it's the skeleton of it, but it's an ancient amphibian. It says that they averaged about 4'11" to 6'7" long. and could grow up to 9 feet and 10 inches long, making them the largest land animals of their time. That's what I'm fucking talking about. Bring back the giant frogs. Bring them back. Everything went to shit once the giant frogs were gone, obviously, because what's the difference between right now and back then? Right now, we don't have giant fucking frogs. Mystery solved. That's how we fix the world. Bring them back. I don't care if they eat me. It would be an honor to be food for this magnificent creature. And I'm looking at pictures. Some of these are like really good. These drawings that people are doing that are picturing what this animal could have looked like. A lot of them look like alligators and frogs mixed together, which makes sense looking at the skeleton that I'm seeing here. But one of them looks like a banana slug on legs, which is terrific. And that one is drawn by Prehistory by Liam on DeviantArt. I'm not making fun of your drawing. I love it. Just looks a little banana sluggy. I think that's great. But that's the frog facts for today. There used to be a big old honking giant frog. And it's not around anymore, which is sad. So sorry about the sad fact. But sometimes facts aren't always happy, and that's just a fact. Okay. All right. Thanks for joining me for this episode. And what did I say I was going to do next time? Oh, the Internet Hall of Fame. I hope I remember to do that next week. Okay, bye.